So, folks, I've got with me a very dynamic individual who's Canadian of origin, and right now you're making your home in the U.S., yes?
That's right. Yeah, in Texas.
In Texas. Folks, if you don't recognize this blues woman, her name's Sue Foley, and she's just come out with a brand new album recently called One Guitar Woman.
That's right.
Okay. You've been you've been busy in the last few years. I remember when the Ice Queen came out, it was a flurry of activity. And you tour and you participate. You've been given accolades. Maple Blues recognized you for your talent and your audacity in the blues side of things. How long did it take to actually create this new album from start to finish?
One Guitar Woman was created. I mean, it took actually several decades because some of the guitar styles I had to study that I wasn't. I mean, I'm a blues player, so it took me, to study classical techniques, and some of the different finger picking techniques that I do on the album actually took a few decades to get to where I was able to actually perform them. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
And did you write the songs? I'm assuming that most of the styles that I've seen, you tend to take a traditional and you adapt it to what you want to convey. Did you do the same thing this time around, or was it entirely just a brand new composition of tunes that you decided to put in can?
Well, I didn't compose a lot for this album because it's a tribute to the pioneering females of guitar. So it's very conceptual, and I really had to study other people's work to pull it off. So it's more of a tribute to them and their contributions to the guitar and the history of guitar and to their cultures. But also, when you do something like that, you're not necessarily you're reimagining it. I'm doing it from my own perspective, but I didn't rewrite the music. I only wrote 2 songs for the album, and the rest are covers that I reinterpreted my own way, but also paying very special care with how the guitar is represented.
Okay. Now the album itself is, I wouldn't say flashy. It's the other way around. It's just enough to actually say, okay, it's this type of music that we can expect. The first tune on the album that brings to mind, for some odd reason, the ragtime tune. It's got that feeling, but the old.
Yeah, well, it is. That's a Piedmont folk finger picking tune by Elizabeth Cotton, and it is tied to ragtime because that kind of guitar is kind of tied to ragtime piano in some ways. That style of guitar playing.
Mm-hmm.
You're playing an oscillating bass line, and you're doing melodies on the top string, so there's a lot going on. So if you listen to ragtime piano, there's a lot of technicality and counter rhythms within it, and it's the same with this style of guitar, so that's actually very accurate.
And the rest of the album has a little bit more of a it's really acoustic, like super acoustic. It's only you and the guitar. That's it. And your singing vocals, of course.
Yeah, one guitar, one woman, one guitar woman. I did it all on one guitar, a nylon string flamenco guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all acoustic, and it was all recorded live because in order to execute the songs accurately, you really have to play them in the moment, playing and singing. So you're doing those both at the same time, and it's very organic that way.
That brings a good question. Since I've known you, I remember the first image of you was actually when you were playing an electric guitar. We've come into glasses. It's the age.
I just wanted to make sure I was good in the camera. That's all. That look all right.
You are. I'm trying my best to make sure that you're focused.
Right.
So the first guitar I saw you on was when you were younger, and it was on an electric guitar. Few and far years, you decided to fluctuate going on to acoustics and then guitars. But out of all those guitars that you've played, uh, string wise, do you only use nylon or do you prefer other types?
I can play it anything really. I mean, I play guitar. I mainly play in standard tuning. I play steel strings on my, Fender Telecaster, and I can also play a steel string acoustic. I don't have any. I just prefer the sound of nylon strings. I think they're softer sounding and prettier on acoustic. So I've always been drawn to them.
Yeah, that's true.
So mainly it's Telecasters and flamencos. That's what I play.
Have you ever dabbled in the flamenco style of music, or is it just?
Well, yeah, I have. I mean, I studied flamenco, which taught me a lot of the right-hand techniques that I'm using on the album, even. So I do a Spanish piece. It's not a flamenco song, but it's a traditional Spanish classical piece called Malagueña, which is very, very popular. But it does incorporate a lot of the classical techniques, and flamenco techniques are the same.
Okay.
They're Spanish guitar techniques, basically.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, that kind of that makes sense. The I don't know what to ask, because you've got so much behind you and you built so much on your career as you came along. Right now with this album, I'm assuming that you're probably, well, actually not probably, you are touring. In fact, you're coming in the Maritimes very shortly for 3 stops.
Yeah.
And then there's in between I mean, you're flying in and you're flying out almost.
That's true.
How do you find that for as a blues woman, having to travel so often? I mean, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, but how do you cope with all this traveling?
That's what we do. That's what we do. It's what we've always done. We're used to it. This is our job.
Well,
I mean, everybody in our business, that's what they do. That's how you reach the fans. That's how you bring the music to the people. It's a very important process. An important part of our work is that we travel and we make the journey to audiences to share our music and hopefully uplift people in the process. But, all my heroes, that's what they did, Clarence Gatemouth Brown, B.B. King was on the road until he was in his 90s, I mean, Buddy Guy's still on the road. It's what we do. That's what the life of a blues musician is.
True. Not to say the least. I've heard horror stories as I've heard interesting stories, and just regular run-of-the-mill when it comes to having to travel. But do you prefer traveling? I know internationally you have to do it by plane unless you're touring, crossing into Canada and then going down the rest of the way by bus or by camper van or some other mode of conveyance. Is there one that you prefer when you're touring in the U.S.?
No, we do a lot of flying, which is just the way it is. I mean, back when we were starting out, we jumped in a van all together and drove everywhere, and I don't do that anymore. It's not practical, and it's just too hard to get anywhere fast enough. So basically we fly in, like we are to the East Coast. We'll fly in and we'll play a few dates around the area, and then we'll fly out.
Yeah.
And that's the way most people are doing it now.
Okay, well,
it's only a few that are actually getting in a van or a bus. Sometimes people get in a bus and drive all the way around, and that's workable.
Okay.
A little more comfortable.
For music instrument wise, do you actually book a seat for the guitar that you prefer?
No. I just check my guitars. Yeah, I put them in good cases and I check them.
Okay, well, that's good. While you're traveling and doing all of this, because I do know that you've got some rest periods where you go back home and you decompress and you enjoy nature and enjoy the environment. So, or at least that's what I think when I actually managed to contact you last week and you said, no, I'm not ready right now, but we can do it next week.
Right.
I,
Yeah. I was not in town, and I was out in the country, and I probably wouldn't have had good enough internet to do
no,
it.
that's
So.
okay. I've got you now, which is the least that I can say. Um, when you're doing, apart from the downtime periods where you're at home, do you actually partake or do any hobbies to keep you kind of de-stressed during the tours, or are you entirely focused on just concentrating on the music?
No, I have a very balanced life. I try to eat really well. I go to the gym. I go to yoga. I do Pilates. I go out with friends. I have a pretty normal life, and I keep pretty busy. I work on my career a lot. I'm very much focused on my business, so there's a lot of work there. And then we travel, and that's a lot of work. And then in between, I try to have a good time and take care of myself. That's it.
Well, Sue, I wish you the best for this album to be voted as one of the best during the Maple Blues Award.
Thank you.
I also want to wish you a good trip coming into the Maritimes and that you'll want to come by more often.
I love it out there. I wish we could get out there more often.
Well,
So
the
we're
way
excited.
the way things are doing right now, a lot. I know that a lot of musicians in Canada are doing they're touring Mexico, and then they're touring some in the U.S. Mostly are touring in Canada. Some, like you, have an international focal point, and you try to accommodate as many crowds as you can without killing yourself. But there is one important question. What's your favorite food dish?
You know what? Maybe a good stir fry.
Any particular stir fry, beef, chicken, pork?
Something healthy, maybe chicken or tofu, something light, healthy with vegetables. That sounds good.
Noodles, brown rice, or rice?
Brown rice. How about that? That's a good question.
It is, and I try to stump my people, always asking the same. You'd be surprised at how people react. But your reaction says 1,000 suns and smiles. It's a,
Right.
it's it was the greatest of times to try to catch you when you were doing your tours, but this is the best way of doing it for me and for my blues musicians, composers, jazz musicians. I don't have to worry about having them to kind of interrupt their touring and their tight time frames. So with this, that's all. Is there anything you'd like to add before we finish the interview?
No, I'm just thank you for your patience, and I'm glad we got to speak, and I'm really looking forward to coming down east. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Sue.
All right. Take care. Thank you.